tonight's topic, let's get right into it, okay? It's about creative financing, all right? So why would you want to do creative financing? So that way you can reduce holding costs. Would that be a good benefit to do? All right? If you use a hard money lender today, a private money lender, generally how much is the interest rate? 12.5%. Okay, some go up to 15 depending on your experience level, right? So between 10% to 15 depending on who you're talking to, all right? The ones that are lower tend to sell their loan to somebody else. The ones that are higher, it tends to be their own money, so they have more control over it, okay? So there's pros and cons between the cost of money. So tonight's topic, let's get right into it, okay? It's about creative financing, all right? So why would you want to do creative financing? So that way you can reduce holding costs. Would that be a good benefit to do? All right? If you use a hard money lender today, a private money lender, generally how much is the interest rate? 12.5%. Okay, some go up to 15 depending on your experience level, right? So between 10% to 15 depending on who you're talking to, all right? The ones that are lower tend to sell their loan to somebody else. The ones that are higher, it tends to be their own money, so they have more control over it, okay? So there's pros and cons between the cost of money. So your goal, though, is to reduce holding costs. Also, have you guys ever come across a deal where the owner may be either underwater in the mortgage or have little equity to where you couldn't do the deal that made sense for you, right? Because they owe too much money to their current mortgage company, and you can't buy the deal low enough, and a short sale is not possible. So what do you do in those situations, okay? So creative financing allows you to be able to do deals where traditional or private financing would not work, all right? And also, guess what? In creative financing, you don't need to go through a full doc application like you would for a traditional loan. Also, you won't have to go through a credit check. So you have to go through the hard inquiries every so often when you do a deal, which dings your credit score, all right, on all the 3 credit bureaus. So those are the reasons why you should do creative financing. So I don't want to speak too much about this because I am not personally the expert of this. And I want to introduce to you guys someone who actually I've known for several years now. He drove up here all the way from Suffolk, Virginia. All right, that's how long away? 3.5, 4 hours away. He's originally from Northern Virginia, and so this is not a new place for him, but he drove all the way here to be with us tonight to be a guest speaker, and he started off with fix and flip, all right, and been very successful at that, and now has learned a lot of different facets of real estate and creative financing, okay? So I cannot speak more highly about this gentleman. He knows 110% of the facts, loves to have fun, all right, loves helping people, but the great thing I love about him is that he's truly down to earth. So please give me a warm welcome, round of applause to Mr. Darrell Jordan. Hello, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
All right, so tonight we're going to talk about effectively using SubTo. How many in the room have used SubTo before? How many can spell SubTo? How many in the room know what SubTo means? Fantastic. Okay. We're going to do a short masterclass on SubTo. I love creative financing. Absolutely love it. SubTo is one of those sweet deals that you can do that you can actually acquire properties with little or no cash. Absolutely no credit check whatsoever, and no credentials are required. It's one of those nice, sweet deals. Another benefit is you can take advantage of some of those 2, 3, and 4% interest rate loans that people acquired a few years ago. All right, so a lot of benefits to that. So let's get going. Tonight is for education, right? So I'm not offering professional services advice. I can offer you that kind of consulting advice, but tonight is for general education. And before I go too far, let me pray, okay? Because I want you to get a lot out of the meeting tonight, and I want to be clear so you can get it. So join me in prayer. Father God, there's a great group that is gathered here tonight. And oh Lord, I'm asking that you'll help me to clearly convey the information tonight, and I'm also praying for them, that they can hear it, they'll see it, they'll understand it, and they'll be able to put it into practice to improve their lives. Simply by praying this simple prayer, we believe it is done now in Jesus' name, and everybody said, amen. All right, with that in mind, let's get going. Okay, here's the agenda tonight. It's going to be in 4 parts. I'm going to talk about the very basics because when I first got started in this, I was learning about fix and flip, obviously. I was learning about some other things like SubTo. And as I was learning during the period of time, people would say, well, SubTo is one of the most difficult strategies. It can't be, because I did a SubTo on my first deal. Can't be, right? However, there are some best practices you want to do, and we'll talk about some of those tonight. So we'll talk about the basics, and I find that a lot of people kind of miss some things in the basics, and that's why we're starting from the very beginning. And since you don't already know a lot about SubTo, that's actually a good thing, because you can do SubTo a lot of different ways. I'm going to teach you best practices tonight. We're going to talk about the benefits. I've already given you some so far. Talk about the prospects for SubTo, and then we're going to talk about best practices. How do you process these? Is that good? All right, let's get going. We'll start with the very basics, and the first thing we're going to talk about is title. Okay, we're going all the way back to the very basics. If you understand the basics, you'll see how SubTo can be very sweet, how you can do it, how you can make it work, if you understand what's going on. So what is title? Title is a legal term which means ownership. So every time I say title tonight, I want you to think what? Ownership. So when I say title, you think, yeah, this goes really well when you participate, okay? Yep. I encourage you to participate. Now, I think I'm going to answer most of your questions as I go along, but still, if I say something you don't understand, go ahead and raise your hand so we can, hey, it's good to see so many people here tonight that I know or have met. Okay, so title simply means the person, the organization who controls the property, has all rights and all authorities for that particular property. Title can be held by individuals, LLCs, entities, trusts. Titles can be owned by a number of different types of people. So we're talking about title. Now we're going to talk about deed. And a lot of times people will get the terms mixed up. They'll say things like title deed. When I say title tonight, you should be thinking what? All right, we're good with that. Okay. So what is a deed? Deed is actually an instrument that transfers title. That's what a deed is. All right? And this is how you can actually acquire properties with little or no cash, simply by transferring ownership through a deed. Now, a deed is a legal document, right, which transfers property here. So here's some differences between title and deed. Number one, deed is a physical legal document which is recorded in the courthouse. You can actually go down there and find that document, all right? Title is not a document. We're talking about real estate, and we're talking about in Virginia. Title is simply a term which determines ownership. So if I wanted to prove to someone that I own 105 Day Street, I don't pick up that house and take it down to the courthouse to prove it. What do? I simply need to prove title. And how do I prove title? Deed. The last transfer of ownership. Who did it go to? That's how we determine ownership. Okay? Title is simply a term. All right, let's go on. Now, title and mortgage. Now we're starting to get closer to SubTo. Title proves who owns the property. Is that correct? When I say title, you think? Absolutely, you got it. So mortgage is what? It is a loan which you procure to purchase such an expensive product. About 90% of properties are purchased through a mortgage. You do not need a mortgage to purchase a home. Is that correct? You can purchase a home with cash, correct? Yeah. In fact, that's what we want to do as investors. We want to purchase with cash or cash equivalent. Is that correct? However, for most of our personal homes, most of us don't have the kind of money to buy a home, especially up here in Northern Virginia. So we procure a mortgage to do that. So that's what the mortgage is, all right? And usually the property is pledged as collateral to make sure you pay that mortgage back. Is that correct? Right. All right, so we know what a mortgage is, right? What is a mortgage? Loan. It's a loan, correct. All right, now let's talk about this. I put in green was so important to SubTo. When normally we think title and normally we think mortgage, we think they go together. They're actually not connected. That's where SubTo comes in. They're not connected. You think they're connected because 90% of properties that are purchased, they're purchased with a mortgage. And they're both in the same name. Title's in the name of the person who acquired the mortgage to purchase the property. The other 10%, however, didn't even use a mortgage in the first place. All right, so what is SubTo? Sub 2 is acquiring a property subject to the existing mortgage. In other words, you're going to utilize the existing financing when you purchase that property. You don't go out and get a hard money loan to buy it. You use the existing mortgage that's already on the property, assuming the seller is willing to do that. Now, we'll talk about this more in detail tonight. So normally when you as an investor, you're going out and you're talking to a prospect about purchasing their home sub 2, you're not going to say, I'd like to purchase your property sub 2, because they don't know what it means. Half investors don't even know what it means. You simply say, I would love to purchase your property utilizing the existing financing. They understand what that means. That's the terminology you want to use. Any questions so far? Okay. What you're doing is taking over the payments. You are not assuming the loan, okay? You're not assuming the loan. You're agreeing to make the payments on the existing loan. The mortgage stays in the name of the seller. This is how you can do this quickly, and it doesn't take 6 to 8 weeks, because we've got to get approved for that mortgage. When you're assuming, it's going to take some time, because they need to check you out. They need to check out your job, your W-2, your credit. Make sure that you can afford to do that. Again, what is sub 2? It is taking title, which means what? To a property via this deed transfer, correct? All right, so straight on that. You do not transfer the mortgage. You do not transfer the mortgage. You agree to make those payments on time on behalf of the person who the mortgage was written in the name of. Now, so far, is this out of the ordinary for you? Yes, it is. It is. Most people don't do this. Most people wouldn't do this. Would you do this? Would you sell your property this way? No. However, there is a group of people who are in certain circumstances who would love you to take their property and get this cloud all from above their head. Some people get so far behind in their mortgages. Since I've been in this business, I've seen, especially during COVID, I've seen people who are behind on their mortgage 2 and 3 years. And they're behind $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And interest has been tacked onto that, and late fees have been tacked onto that. And guess what? That's on their credit report. Certain people would love to get away from under that cloud. Now, that's rare, but some people are in that situation. And every prospect that you see for sub 2 is not in that bad of a shape. However, there are some people who would love you to take this property utilizing the existing finances. You just need to find that group of people, okay? So let's keep going. So, I shouldn't have showed you that. Let me ask you the question again. Is sub 2 legal? I mean, you probably haven't heard much about this sub 2. How many people in the room would sell their property sub 2, their home? That's it. That's the answer. There are some people in certain circumstances who would be willing to sell you their property in this manner. And so that's why this is the creative financing portion of acquiring a home. So let me ask you a question. Is sub 2 legal? Assuming you didn't see yes back there. It's perfectly legal. Let me ask you another question. Is sub 2 moral? Any no's in the room?
You said, is it normal?
Is it moral? Is it ethical?
Yes, you're helping someone.
Thank you. Because most people, when they hear this, they think you're taking somebody's property. No, I'm a problem solver. And that's what we do as investors. We find these cases where people are in a pretty bad situation, and we actually help them out. Let's go on. Sub 2 is perfectly legal. Now, you do need to watch out for the due on sale clause. Do mortgage companies like this? The fact that you transfer title via deed, however, you did not transfer the mortgage, or you didn't assume the mortgage. How do you think the mortgage company feels about this? They don't like it. In fact, in the past, when they've done this, when they've run across circumstances like this, they've sued people, taken people to court. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't. All right, so the due on sale clause. However, back in 1982, the mortgage company finally got Congress to come up with this law, the Garn-St. Germain Act, which makes the alienation clause enforceable. In other words, whenever they see title transfer and the mortgage did not, in fact, in every mortgage today, there's a clause in there that says, when that occurs, the mortgage company has the right to call that note due, which means that balance is due today, not tomorrow. So if there's, excuse me,
On what is due or the balance of
the balance on what is due on the mortgage.
just what's due on the mortgage?
No, the balance of the mortgage. The entire mortgage is due. Okay, so the question was, what was the question?
That was my question.
The question was, I want to repeat it for the recording. What was the question?
My question was, just was it what was due on the mortgage or the entire mortgage?
Yeah. So the question is, what is due with the due on sale clause? Is how much is owed, late fees and all that to get kind of current, or is it the entire balance? The answer is the entire balance. So the due on sale clause is the thing you do need to watch out for. Remember I said my first deal was a SubTo deal? Guess what? I lost a lot of sleep wondering when the bank was going to call me. They never called me. Now, during part 4, I'm going to give you best practices so you can get some sleep at night, okay? SubTo, we never even talked to the bank prior to closing. Now, after closing, that's going to be your first phone call. Again, your question was, for the recording?
I thought there was a clause, I think it's like paragraph 33, 34, that says this loan is assignable.
I don't know about the assignable part, but assumable, yes. Yes. So the question is there a clause in the mortgage whereby the mortgage can be assumable? Yes, you can assume a mortgage, however, that requires you to qualify for it. And you need to prove your credentials to prove that you can pay the mortgage and take over that mortgage. And that takes a little bit of time. With SubTo, I can close in 10 days because I don't go, in fact, I don't need to ask permission to do SubTo. You don't need to ask permission of the mortgage company. In fact, I don't make a call to the mortgage company other than to find out what the current balance is or to verify what the payments are, okay, prior to settlement. Now, at settlement, after settlement, guess what? My first call is going to be to the mortgage company. We'll talk about that later. Okay, due on sale clause. Yes, I think I'm going the wrong way here. Okay, here we go. Due on sale clause. Great, great, great. Okay, we talked about this. Let's move on. Talk about that. Okay, now, most mortgage companies, however, don't enforce this law. Let me give you some examples where they don't. For asset protection, your lawyer may recommend that you put your valuable properties in a trust. There was a while back I went back to my attorney and we were putting a will together and some things related to health to determine who would make decisions on my behalf if I'm unable to make those decisions. And one of the things he recommended to me is that we put our house in a trust. Do you realize when I take my house out of my name and put it in the trust name, I've just violated the due on sale clause? And the question is, do the banks call that note due when you do that? And the answer is no, because they know attorneys make this recommendation for asset protection purposes. How many of you have purchased your home? The gentleman in the back, the homes that you purchase, have you ever purchased those in your own personal name?
Few, but most of the time in the LLC.
Okay, so you purchased some in your own personal name. Anybody else in the room who have purchased a home in their own personal name? Yes. Probably most of us who own a personal home. A little bit more about my background. Even though I went full-time in real estate investing 5 years ago, I met Jan 6 years ago. Prior to that, I dabbled in real estate investing. I was a landlord. Every time I bought a new house, I kept the old house and rented it out, all in my own name. Of course, you come to a real like this, you learn that's not quite a smart deal to leave properties in your own name. I had no idea if someone had slipped and fallen on one of my rental properties or my own personal home, they could have sued me for everything I've got. My 401k, my car, my house, everything I own. It is smart, After we come to a real like this, we learn to put those assets in an entity to protect your personal assets from whatever may befall your business, and vice versa. So whenever you take one of those properties in your personal name and you put it in an entity, do you realize you just violated the do and sell clause? The gentleman in the back, have you done that? Have you transferred your properties out of your personal name into your entity?
Yep.
Do you realize you just violated the do and sell clause? Do you realize they could have called that note due? Have they? See, that's what I'm saying. Even though the bank has the right to call the note due, in most cases they do not. Okay? I'll give you another one. Yeah, that was the one here, number 3 I just gave you. Number 2, let's look at that. Yeah, do you realize that when you miss a few payments, the bank has the right to call that note due? So how many in the room have ever been late on any of your mortgage payments? Don't raise your hand. Do you realize when you've been late on your payments, a payment or two, they had the right? But do they? I just gave you some examples, especially around COVID. I found I found some prospects who were behind on their mortgage 2 and 3 years, and the mortgage company still didn't enforce the rule. So there are instances, even though the bank has the right, they still don't. So you don't have to be quite so aware of that alienation clause and that do and sell clause if you're doing the other things right that I tell you about in part 4. Okay? All right. Let's do a hypothetical. Let's say there's someone in foreclosure or pre-foreclosure and you bring the mortgage current. Let's say we go back to that prospect who were 2 and 3 years behind in their payments. You bring that mortgage current and you begin making payments on the first of the month. Let's say you acquired a SubTo. Tell me, who is the bank going to like more, you or the person who was originally on the mortgage? Which one? Because the mortgage is more concerned about getting their money. Is that correct? Mortgage companies, they're not in the business of calling notes due, even though they can. They're not in the business of searching titles and see who changed title, who's no longer on the mortgage company. They're not in the habit of doing that. They can. But they generally don't. What are mortgage companies in the business of doing? Okay, a lot of IT people in the room, so you're okay. IT, basically, you like math and science. So I think most of us are okay. And we're going to talk about an amortization table right now. So those who don't like math, I hope your brains don't blow up right now, but I've heard of people who just don't like math. Anyway, I'm trying to prove a point here. Down in Suffolk, the median price home is around $367,000. Let's assume you put a down payment on that home and you pick up a mortgage for $350,000. I realize the interest rate is higher than 5% right now, but for simplicity, let's use 5% interest rate. Typical 30-year mortgage, the principal and interest will be $1,879. With me, okay? We got a mortgage. We will look at a typical mortgage at 5% interest. Now I realize houses are 2 and 3 times higher here. This is why I left. That is not. She's right. That's my wife in the back. Oh, would you join in welcoming my wife, Kathleen Jordan, in the back? She came up with me tonight. Thank you for coming. I even have my son-in-law right here. Welcome. I have my grandson on the front row today. I didn't really tell you, I was a pastor up here for 12 years as well. I even have a church member over here on the left, too, in the audience tonight. So, typical principal into 1879. So let's take a look at this. This is what the amortization table looks for the first year. Do you realize out of that 1879 payment, $429 is being reduced from the principal and a whopping $1,400 goes to interest to the bank? I'm hearing the comments in the room. Isn't it awful? Absolutely awful, but that's just the way it is. And each month that changes. A little more is reduced from $2 more. A little more is being reduced from the principal, but still most of that payment goes to the bank, right? So over the first 12 months, $5,000 of your payments will be reduced from the principal and a whopping $17,000 goes to the bank as interest. What are banks in the business of doing? They're in the business of making that interest. Let's take that same scenario, mortgage $350,000, and I realize interest rate aren't at 10%, but for simplicity here and to prove my point, let's assume the interest rate is at 10%. Now the payment goes up from $1,879 or $1,870, whatever it was, to $3,000. Okay? Now, out of that $3,000 payment every month, only $154 is being reduced from the principal. It gets worse. And a whopping $2,916.67 it goes to the bank, which means out of the first 12 months, only $2,000 of your payments are being reduced from the principal, and a whopping $35,000, a whopping $35,000 goes to the bank as interest. Is that crazy or what? That's crazy. It almost seems illegal that Congress allows banks to do this to us. The point I'm trying to make is they're not in the business of calling notes due. They're not in the business of searching titles. They're in the business of making money. They're in the business of making money. So far we've had some basics. We're good now. Let's go on to the benefits of SubTo. Why in the world would somebody want to do this? You can literally buy without cash. Okay? Why? Why? Because you purchase simply by transferring title. There's nothing in there that says you have to pay money to transfer title in order to acquire somebody's property. You acquire the property simply by transferring title. Is the light bulb coming on? No down payment is required. I mean, you can supply some money. You can give the previous seller some money. But literally, you transfer ownership how? Through deed. Yeah, you transfer ownership simply through deed. So if you can find the right circumstance where you can acquire a property simply by transferring deed, then you have just acquired a piece of property, and a dream team attorney can do this all day long. Now, going back to that story, my first SubTo deal. I'm learning how to do SubTo deals. I read about this thing. I thought I'd try it. Went to Jan's fix and flip class, and I heard of this scenario. I was sitting in the living room with someone it was an older lady. Her husband had died. The house, she wasn't able to maintain it anymore. She was getting older. She wanted to move in with her daughter. Her daughter wanted her to move in with her. And she said, "You're a real estate investor, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes!" Hadn't done a single deal yet. Remember, I just went to Jan's class. "Are you a real estate investor?" "Yes!" She simply heard I was doing real estate investing. And I heard about the scenario, and I remembered, wow, SubTo here. I said, "Would you be willing to sell me the house, allow me to use your existing mortgage?" And she said, "Yes." I didn't have a contract with me at the time. I've learned now to always keep a contract with me. But we verbally agreed on the deal. I went back home, put together a contract, came back, and she signed it. It was a SubTo contract. Again, I'm learning this thing. I took the contract over to the largest so-called real estate attorney in Suffolk that I could find. And guess what? Even though he said he was a real estate attorney, he didn't know how to do a SubTo. He's reading the books. I was literally a page ahead of him. I'm telling him what he needs to do to help me purchase this property SubTo. So everybody who says they're a real estate attorney, they can do this, they don't know what they're doing. That's why I say you need a dream team real estate attorney who knows what they're doing. Okay, and since then, I have acquired such a person. Benefit number 2, you can buy a property without credit. Isn't that wild? Today we're taught you purchase expensive things on credit, correct? A home, a car. Some people buy furniture on credit because it's expensive. You can literally buy a property without credit. Why? Because what is SubTo? Transferring property via a deed. That's why we went through part 1 on the basics here. As long as we can transfer title, you've just purchased a property without anybody checking your credit. Is that wild or what? All right, so, and nobody's going to check your credit. Why is nobody going to check your credit? Somebody answer that. Because we're changing ownership. What about the mortgage company? What about the mortgage company? Come on, come on. Excuse me?
The loan is on the original owner name.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, but why is nobody going to check my credit in order to purchase this property?
Applying for loan.
The question is, who's going to check it? Because we're not assuming we're not assuming the mortgage. We're simply agreeing to pay the mortgage as long as the seller gives us that ability and that right. No credit's required. That's awesome, isn't it? To be able to purchase property without anybody checking your credit. No credentials, because we're not assuming the loan. Nobody's going to ask us where we work, how much we make, how much money you have in the bank. How much do you make? Nobody's going to make sure your DTI matches. We're getting there. So we're talking about the benefit. Oh, we're getting ready to talk math again. Hold on, guys. When you purchase a property, SubTo, you purchase a paid down mortgage. Let me show you how this works. This thing is beautiful. Let's go back to the amortization table again. We're going to use the same example, $350,000 mortgage at 5%. Okay? We've already gone through this. Payments of that, $5,000 gets reduced on the principal the first year, $17,000 goes to the bank the first year. This is year one. Okay? When you purchase a property SubTo, someone could have already paid this mortgage down 15 years. In fact, let's take that scenario. Let's say 15 years later. This is what the payments look like now. Now, instead of $420 being reduced from the principal, now $888 are being reduced from the principal and less money goes to the bank. Isn't that good? This is what you want. This is in year 15. Now in year 15, $11,000 of my money, my payments, is being reduced from the principal. Now only $11,000 goes to the bank. Starting to get good now. Let's go into year 16. At some point in time, this is going to cross over, where my payment more is being reduced from the principal than it goes to the bank. And that's when you say, hallelujah. I mean, because now more of my payment is helping me. Is that correct? So in year 16, $12,000 being reduced from the principal, and now only $10,000 goes to the bank. Are you seeing that the longer this mortgage has been paid down, the better it is for you? Are you seeing it?
Yeah.
Because that's what simply occurs in the amortization table. Another benefit of SubTo. You acquire a mortgage that doesn't start in year one, which is terrible, because most of the money goes to the bank. And I've literally purchased one of these. Okay. All right. Here's an example. This is a property I purchased. This is after renovation. This is not how the property looked when I purchased it. An investor had purchased it 15 years before, said he was going to do something with it. It was probably an investor like you all in the room here. They get started, they bought, I take that back. I take it back. He was an investor. He purchased the property, put a mortgage on it, and didn't do anything with it. And so a wholesaler came along and said, you want to sell this house? He said, yeah. And the wholesaler was smart enough to say, would you allow the new purchaser to purchase it SubTo? And he said, I'm okay with that. I bought a contract. I bought this SubTo on contract from a wholesaler. And so let's see, the example was here. I bought a SubTo from a previous investor, 15 years. So here's what occurred. Each payment, we already said that, each payment now, 15 years down there, more of that payment is helping me, less is helping the bank. So it's another benefit of me acquiring a SubTo mortgage, simply from just knowing how the amortization table works. Now, the young lady here said, what if there's equity involved? Aren't they going to feel like they're losing the equity? That's secondary. That's a secondary thought. Benefit to us, a primary thought is, well, I'm acquiring this property with a lot of equity or some equity. Because if there's a lot of equity, SubTo works better when there's a smaller amount of equity, because that thought's going to come up. This is not worth it to me to let you acquire this with all this equity in the house. And I'll give you an example. When the equity is a small amount, you're easier to convince them, or they're more apt to sell the property to you via SubTo because equity is not a concern anymore. Okay, instant equity. Yeah. So here's an example here. Here's that first fix and flip that I purchased, and this is not how the house looked when I purchased it. This is how the house looked after I renovated, after I implemented everything Jan said to do. I bought it SubTo. The mortgage was $146,000. The value at the time was $205,000. So the equity was $59,000. So I picked up the house with $59,000 of equity minus whatever my expenses were at the time. So I picked up some immediate equity. Does that make sense? Here's another benefit here. Low interest mortgage. You can acquire mortgages at 2, 3, and 4%. Where can you get a mortgage today at 2, 3, or 4%? You can't. You can acquire a property that has a 2, 3, or 4% mortgage on it, however, via SubTo. And that's sweet to be able to acquire a 4% mortgage. I have some under contract now. So at the end of the meeting tonight, if you'd like to purchase it, I'll let you know what it is, right? At 4%. Let's go on. So let's summarize here. All right. You can purchase with little or no cash, no credit, no credentials, pay down mortgage, instant equity, and acquire low interest mortgage. Is that kind of cool? Anybody excited about potentially doing the SubTo? So you can do SubTo as an investor. You can even purchase your own personal home SubTo like this and acquire a 2% mortgage. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? Excuse me?
Can you refinance it?
Of course you can refinance. Yeah, if you acquire the property, acquire title, bill deed is your property. You can always refinance it. In fact, I use the BRRRR process in my buy and hold part of our business. And so even though I acquired that property that was 15 years old through a SubTo, even though I acquired it, SubTo, and then I used a private lender to renovate it, when I was all in done, I put my own mortgage on it, wiped out the old, okay, paid off my private lender, and I take the excess to be able to put into the next property. So yes, once you acquire it, you can refinance it. Okay, part 3, who are the prospects? And we've already mentioned some in the room here. Who are the prospects? Going backwards here. Here we go. All right. Anybody on the MLS who wants and needs to sell fast, right? Anybody who wants to list price. See, I'm willing to get, because of some of the benefits we just talked about, pay down mortgage, because of some of those benefits, I may be willing to let the seller give the seller list price if they'll give me my terms. In some cases, that works for me and that works for the seller. So a prospect can be anybody on the MLS who just can't sell their house, or who they want list price, or as an expired listing, they haven't been able to sell it, and there's a reason why it didn't sell, or it's been on MLS for months. So these become a prospect because we can close quickly. Right? As an investor, right? We close quickly. 2 to 3 weeks, not 2 to 3 months. No mortgage approval is required. We don't require an inspection. We may do an inspection. We may do a formal inspection, but it's not a requirement to purchase SubTo. No appraisals. So now, people on the MLS who have been on there forever, they may be over now. They haven't been able to sell it the normal way. They weren't able to get the price they wanted. For whatever reason, could be in the wrong neighborhood, whatever reason, it didn't sell. I'm just saying, they are potential prospects, somebody on the MLS, right? I'm willing to give you your price if you give me my terms. My term is, I want to purchase utilizing the existing finances. Does that make sense? They become a prospect. I'm not saying they're the greatest prospect, but they are a prospect. Number two, somebody with little equity. We talked a moment ago, somebody may not want to do this if a lot of equity is in the house, but if they've got a little equity, they're more willing to sell the property. Vets with VA loans become prime candidates. And I'll show you an illustration of this. After paying sales commission and closing costs, they may have to walk away writing a check. Now, who wants to write a check at closing to sell the house? Anybody, any takers in the room? No. We expect to make money at closing. But if you bought the house with little money, you may have to write a check at closing, right? What if they're moving? What if a vet need to move? usually they've got no equity in the house, and they're going to end up paying at closing. Here's an example. This was back in 2021. Let me rephrase that. The couple purchased this home for $339,900 in 2021. I realize I'm in Northern Virginia. These are homes down in Hampton Roads. Okay, I realize you can't do that here. Okay? This is a VA loan, so his mortgage was $343,000. He put nothing down on it, right? So the mortgage is actually more than what he bought it for. All right, so that's incorrect. This is 2023. So in August of 2023, the value of the home was $361,000. That's when they decided to get a divorce. They said, we don't want to live with each other anymore. Let's sell the house. All right? So the problem here is, if they were to sell the house, they need to come up with $32,000 of closing costs for closing costs and the commission, which means they could sell the house, but they have to write a check for $13,598 at settlement. And so a friend of mine knew about this couple, actually worked with them, and introduced us. And I said, hey, you know, I can help you out where you can sell this house and not have to write a check at closing. All right. So here's the example. I actually work with the man here for about 6 weeks, I think it was. He decided not to go my route. He decided to go the MLS route. And he eventually sold the house for $380,000. His sales and closing costs were still $34,200. And after 8 months of keeping this on the market, they wrote him a check for $2,800 as settlement. What this doesn't tell you is that he paid 8 more months of mortgage payments. What this doesn't tell you is that he probably had some repairs to do due to inspection, or the realtor could say, you need to fix this. He paid another $20,000 just to get this $2,800 back. If he had sold to me SubTo, he could have walked away without paying that additional $18,000. So do you see how somebody with little equity can become a prospect? Does that make sense? Solution is, as I purchased SubTo. And owners pay no cost at closing. You simply transfer deed, right? You utilize a deed in order to transfer title. Going back to the basics. Okay. Who are prospects here? And it turns out to be a pretty sweet deal, right? Some cash, but you just acquired a pretty nice home. No credit, no credentials, instant equity. Not a lot, but, you know, a little bit of equity. All right, pre-foreclosure. Somebody's already mentioned this. Who becomes a great prospect for this? Someone who is already in pre-foreclosure. They're already behind the mortgage payments. All right, we can save their credit, right, if we go the SubTo route. We can bring the mortgage current because that's the best practice, to always bring the mortgage. Why do you want to bring the mortgage current? Anybody?
You don't bring it current, the bank will foreclose on your property.
Yeah. As an investor, do you want problems? As an investor, do you want the bank calling you?
No.
As an investor, do you want the bank taking the property from you? So best practice is you clean everything up when you buy the property. At settlement, get it current. That's best practice. Get it current. Yes, it's going to cost you some money, but you don't want the bank calling you. You want to call the bank. And we'll talk about how you get to call the bank. All right. Owner pays no cost at closing. And also, pre-foreclosures, I'll take care of all of the back payments, which means their credit gets cleaned up, right? Which means they can go on with their life if I want to, and if they need to, I can give you some money to get started again, as the young lady said in the back, whether it's $500, $1,000, or whatever. But you just acquired another property, right? Any questions about this particular prospect? Yes?
I just have a question. Say if the person, I guess it's not actually not even asking for forget what you were saying about this. I guess it was a question. If you have a house and everything's paid off,
Then SubTo doesn't work because there's no mortgage. There's another seller finance. I mean, you can do seller financing at that point. There's no mortgage. The seller actually owns the property. That's a great instance to ask the seller to do the financing for you, and then be creative on how you want to pay it back. I purchased a property. How much was that property? $60,000, right? And I talked to the seller. There was no mortgage on it. It was a distressed property. So we worked out the seller financing terms. I gave him a down payment and said, I'll pay you the rest over the next 2 years. And we worked out the terms. That's what went in the contract, and that's what we agreed to do. So if there is no mortgage, the creative financing route you can take is seller financing. If there is a mortgage on it, that's where SubTo comes into play. SubTo only works when there's a mortgage on the property. Okay? All right. Prospects for sale by owner. There's a reason why they're selling or trying to sell for sale by owner. There's a reason for that. This is an example here. I was going through Zillow, and I was looking for sale by owner property. And I actually found this one right here. I found somebody trying to sell this house. And I looked at the numbers, looked pretty good. So guess what? I went and knocked on the door. How many in the room are willing to go knock on somebody's door to see if they're a prospect or not? Anybody? Absolutely. You got to get over that fear. You got to get over that fear. Go knock on the door. If they're publicizing they're selling the house for sale by owner, they're inviting you to come over. Go knock on the door and find out what's going on. So this person bought the house for $298,900 in 2021. They had an FHA loan, so they put a small down payment on it. They were behind 3 months. Now, when I first talked to the lady, she didn't say she was behind. That didn't come up to the third conversation. The first conversation is, I see you're trying to sell the house for sale by owner. I'm an investor. I purchase properties, and I purchase cash. Sometimes I purchase utilizing the existing financing. Are you open to me purchasing your home utilizing the existing financing? Notice I didn't say SubTo in there. And she said, yes, I'm open to that. Oh, that's great. So now we can continue on with the conversation. On the third conversation I had with her, oh, I'm behind 3 months. There is a reason why she was trying to sell this for sale by owner. Okay? However, the value of the house was $391,000, which means there's $100,000 of equity in this house. I said, man, that's pretty interesting. Let's look into that. So it turned out to be a sweet deal for me. I came up with some cash to purchase this. I did purchase this SubTo. And guess what? I ended up with a lot of equity. Who mentioned the equity in the room? You can purchase a home utilizing a lot of equity if you find the Here's what happened. She was a business owner, and her business was failing. Apparently, she didn't see it getting any better. She just wanted to get out. She didn't have enough money to hire a realtor. So she's trying to sell it herself, so there's no commission. It's a great opportunity for investors because I don't want to pay commission to a realtor. I want to work out the deal directly. And so by talking directly with the seller, we're able to work out the deal. All right? No credentials, no credit. And I did acquire the mortgage, and there was instant equity there of $100,000 minus my expenses. It worked out.
Did you offer something to me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. She wants to start a new life, right? Listen. I believe in win, win, win. I'm not happy unless you're happy. I'm not trying to take you for your house. I'm a problem solver. I see you have a problem. I can help you, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, because all she needed was a little cash, right? Now, she was behind 3 months in her mortgage. This was just after, it was after COVID a few years, 2023 or whatever, and there were still these programs out there where she could get caught up on her mortgage. Guess what? I said, if you get caught up on your mortgage, which means I don't have to make those back payments, I'd be willing to give you whatever she was asking for. It was either $10,000 or $15,000 at the time. She got the mortgage caught up, so I didn't have to pay that. I was very willing to pay her the $10,000 or $15,000. Excuse me.
How long did you continue to pay? Did you refinance afterwards?
No.
Just continued.
Yeah. The reason why you want to do SubTo is for all the reasons we just talked about. This is a 4% mortgage. This is a 4% mortgage. And if it's current, I already know what the payment is. This is nice and sweet. I want to continue this thing going. I don't want to refinance it. If I refinance it today, what interest rate am I paying?
More.
How much?
Double.
Definitely more.
Double. Probably double.
As an investor, right? Because it's an investment home. It's going to be a lot more money. So, no, I wanted to keep this SubTo deals. Some deals you want to keep, right? And if you're running Burr and there's some advantages to Burr, then you refinance. Otherwise, I want to keep these sweet mortgages going. Okay, let's keep going on because I don't want to keep it too long. So the prospects are somebody who needs and wants to sell now, somebody wants list price, expired listings, they've not been able to sell it, it's been on the MLS forever, people with little or no equity, like vets, also pre-foreclosures, great prospects, also for sale by owner. Great prospects. Okay, we've come down to the wire here. How many would like to do a SubTo deal now, based on what we talked about so far? Got half of you now. Some of you say, I don't know about this. This is strange. This is not normal. It is not normal. But you can get some sweet deals out of this. How many interested in getting sweet deals in the room? This is just one way you can get sweet deals. So, as I said in the beginning, I lost some sleep because my first deal was SubTo. Well, how do you do these so you don't lose any sleep? How do you process these? And the answer is very carefully. Very carefully. Okay. Number one thing you need is a good SubTo contract. That's what you need. SubTo contract. Your realtor contract's not going to work. Your normal investor contract is not going to work. You'll need a SubTo contract. So in the SubTo contract, we do everything above board. We're not trying to hide anything at all. We're not doing anything under the table. We're doing everything above board. Therefore, we're declaring everything, right? We are doing a title search. We are getting title insurance. This is a normal purchase. I want to be clear that this is my property. There are no additional liens on it. Nobody's going to come out of woodwork and say, this belongs to me or I'm an heir. This is a normal transaction here. And we're doing everything above board, which is why there's a clause in it that says this property is being purchased subject to the existing first mortgage owned by so-and-so. We're not hiding from anybody. We're declaring. Everybody knows this. The attorney knows this. My seller knows this. The buyer knows this. We've already discussed this verbally, but this is going in the contract. Everybody knows what's going on. Clear? All right. Then I'm going to say seller acknowledges that the existing mortgage will remain and is not being assumed by the buyer, but will be paid by the buyer. Why am I putting that clause in there? Because I'm completely above board. Not hiding from anyone, not doing anything shady. Everything's above board. All right. I'm going to put in here clearly what the balance is. The balance is no more than $290,000. I'll be clear. Because I've already gotten that information from the seller. If I need to go all the way back to the bank to verify that, I need to know what I'm purchasing. I need to know what the payment is. Okay? So the next clause is saying the payment is such and such, no more than this per month. I need to know what I'm dealing with. I'm not buying something I don't know what I'm buying. Is that clear? Very clear on what I'm buying. All right. Buyer will bring the mortgage current at settlement. Now, we've talked about this, right? Everybody's going to know we're bringing this current because I don't want the bank calling me. Do not. At least not. Well, I don't ever want the bank calling me. I'm calling the bank. Let's keep going here. All right. In addition to purchase the property subject to, buyer shall pay seller whatever amount. You can leave this clause out if you want. Because to purchase this property, all we need to do is what? Transfer title via deed. Doesn't say anything about transferring money or giving money. However, in many cases, in order to persuade the seller to do a transaction like this, they may need some money. So you put a clause in and say how much you're going to give the person. All right, buyer will permit the seller to even stay in the property rent-free for whatever days. This clause does not need to be in there, but if they're in such bad straits, they don't have any money, they're going to take the money as settlement just to move. I may want to put a clause in there that says you can stay in the house 15 days, 30 days, whatever. Because that's the kind of people you're working with. If they had money, they wouldn't be in this position. If they had money, they wouldn't be selling the house this way. Is that correct? All right. Here's my guarantee. With regard to the existing mortgage, if buyer, that's me, that's you, if we fail to make any payment when such payment is due, I give them the right to take the property back.
That's fair.
Thank you! That's what I want the seller to say. That's how I want them to feel. Remember, this is win-win-win. I don't want the seller to feel like I'm taking their property. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I'm going to make your payments on time. Well, what assurance do you have? What assurance can you give me that you're going to pay this on time? Here's your assurance. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So who pays the homeowner's insurance?
I do. When I own it, who pays homeowner's insurance? Okay? Yeah, as the owner, I'm going to pay homeowner's insurance. If she's behind on it, or if he's behind on it, I want to be clear with those people too. So I may have to get caught up some. But all of the debts related to this payment in buying this house, because now you own this house, I'm responsible for. With title on the house, I have the authority and the responsibilities for this house, whatever they may be. You got it. Now, they're not thinking about debt to income ratio at this point, but just think about it. If they've got one mortgage in their name, and I'm cleaning up their mortgage, I'm cleaning up their credit because I'm making the payments on time, which means their credit is getting better. At some point in time, maybe 2 years down the road, they may want to purchase a home again. They may be in a position to purchase a home again. This mortgage is still in their name. Would it be difficult for them to buy another house with a mortgage already on their credit? Would it be? For some people, this is a concern. For some people, they'll bring this up. Most times, I bring this up. Well, let's deal with it. If the seller wants to purchase another home and have DTI issues, we can set it up so that this home does not negatively impact their DTI. I'm going to take care of that problem too. See, I'm a problem solver. I'm going to take care of that problem. If they have that concern, I'm going to take care of that. Question is, how do I take care of that? In fact, even in here, it says, if seller chooses, steps can be taken to limit the impact of DTI. This will permit the seller to more easily qualify for another loan. This option typically costs $1,500 and must be paid by the seller. Seller opts to take advantage of this feature, yes or no. So we talk about DTI. That's a concern for them. A lot of people in this position are not concerned about DTI. They just want to, man, can you just get me out of this? Most people just, can you get me out of this? However, the smarter ones say, well, if this is going to stay on my mortgage, if this is going to stay on my credit, when I'm able to buy another house, is this going to hurt me? Mr. and Mrs. Customer, I can take care of that for you. I can implement a feature that will typically wipe this mortgage out as far as qualifying for a new mortgage. However, this feature will cost you $1,500 and is due as settlement. Yes or no? Are you interested in this or not? No, it's just a clause that says I'll take care of this. It's just a clause that says I will take care of this.
But this 1,500 is going to be this.
What do you use it for?
Excuse me?
1,500?
I put the $1,500 in there because most people don't want to do this. Most people say, I don't have the $1,500 and I don't want to take it from the money you're going to give me to take care of this. I'm giving them a choice, however. It's their choice. If you want to take care of this, I can take care of this for you. Now, do you know how I take care of this? The DTI issue. How do I wipe this mortgage off their future credit?
Refinance.
Excuse me?
Refinance.
That's correct. If I refinance, the whole mortgage is taken away. That solves it. But I'm not doing that here. I can make this look like a rental. When you qualify for a new loan, in qualification for the new loan, if you have a rental, they usually take 75% of the income and apply it towards your income. In fact, if you've been doing this for 2 years, if you've been renting more than 2 years, I think they'll apply 100% of your income and apply that towards your income equation. That's virtually wiping this out. I typically am going to acquire this property to rent it out anyway. If I were to flip it, this is going away anyway. Is that correct? Yeah. Right? If I acquire SubTo and flip it, this is a moot point because the old mortgage goes away. It's only when I'm keeping the property to rent it, right? So it really is a rental. So I'll just simply tell the mortgage company they're qualifying to, I'm involved, and this is really a rental for so-and-so, and I've actually had to provide a letter like this. What was the question? What was the question? We've forgotten what the question was.
You answered the question.
I answered the question, yes.
If you do retain the property and the seller is retaining the mortgage and you're making the payments every month, and
Correct.
you have to exercise, and they do decide to exercise this option,
Yeah.
does that have any tax implications for either one of you?
Yeah, the seller's name is still on the mortgage. The seller literally could utilize this, but everybody I've acquired this from, I'm not even concerned about it. I can't use this because the mortgage is not in my name. Now, as a new business, I can still count this as an expense. So it isn't a business expense to me. But from a personal standpoint, I couldn't utilize this, but the seller could. However, in our best practices, I tell them anything that comes from the bank, forward it to me. And I'm going to gain access to an online account, and I'm telling the mortgage company any correspondence that formerly went to that person should now come to me. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay, let's move on. All right. Okay, so we're talking about how to process. So number one, you need a good contract. Would you agree? Yes. Would you agree you need a good contract? Great. All right. You need a good dream team attorney. Not like that first one I had. You need a good dream team attorney because we're going to make above board declarations. We're not hiding anything. We're going to transfer title through a deed. We're going to put title insurance on it. And so my Rockstar Dream Team attorney is also a title company, so it's all done right here in-house. You also need a Dream Team attorney that can handle assignment. And so let me ask you this question. SubTo, how many in the room are flippers or are entertaining flipping? Great. Would SubTo work for you? Would a SubTo work in a flip deal?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, one of the hardest parts about doing a flip deal is where you're going to come up with funds to purchase the property.
Correct. That's why we're talking about creative financing tonight on a property that has an existing mortgage on it. Essentially, instead of going out and qualifying for more money or going to a hard money lender and paying 12%, why don't you pick up the existing mortgage that's already at 4%? You just saved a lot of money and time.
Yeah, also the money that you do have, you might not need to borrow from a hard money lender because you're just really paying for your capital improvements.
That's correct. And you're simply making the monthly payment on this. So does SubTo work for a fix and flip? Yes or no? Yes. It works really well for a fix and flip because the mortgage goes away after the fact. After you flip the property, a new mortgage gets on the property, the old one goes away. You're paying it off. Does it work for a buy and hold investor? A slower yes. Yes, it does if you handle it correctly. So you can get some sleep at night. Does this work for a wholesaler? Yes, it does, because I bought one from a wholesaler. SubTo deal, right. So it works for the wholesaler. So it works for all three major forms of real estate investing. This SubTo works. So let's go back to here. We need a good contract, good attorney, because this is a powerful document right here. Your dream team, Rockstar Dream Team attorney is going to give you a specific power of attorney for that property. Yes, you have title. But do you want to call the bank and says, I have title of this property? No. Do you? No. Do you? No. And why not? Because they're due on sale clause. That's right. Instead, you take to the mortgage company what? A specific power of attorney. The specific power of attorney is where the seller gives you all rights to the property. You have all authority given by the seller for that property, which means the bank, the mortgage company, will accept this, a specific power of attorney from the seller that gives you the right to make choices about that mortgage. Now I can go and choose my insurance for this property and have the mortgage company process it. Now I can call the mortgage company that says, hey, from now on, I want you to communicate regarding this mortgage at my company at my address instead of the previous person. And this gives you the right to do this. You see how powerful this is? I'm not declaring that I own the property. However, the seller would give me the right to make choices about the mortgage. That's awesome. That's why this is the very first call I make after settlement. Yes?
So the question I had earlier, but I think this addresses it, is if you want to sell the property, you want to sell the property after acquiring it, or you want to refinance it, this is the instrument that will help you do that.
Yes.
Not trying to find the seller. The seller could have disappeared, you couldn't find him.
So the comment is, this is the document that allows you to do lots of things regarding that property after you purchase it. Absolutely correct. Any other comments or questions? There's a powerful document here. Because you don't want to call the mortgage company and say, I just acquired this property, do you?
No.
No! Instead, you want to call the mortgage company and say, I want to send you this document, this specific power of attorney that the seller has given me regarding to the property. The seller wants me to now manage this mortgage on his or her behalf. What email address should I send this to? What fax number should I send this to? And guess what? They will accept it. And from that point on, they will recognize whatever you say over the phone. They'll recognize anything you do online. In fact, I'm going to get online access from the seller. This thing is awesome. I'm managing this mortgage on behalf of the seller, the person who's on the mortgage, written on the mortgage. This thing is powerful. Now, my first real estate attorney didn't do something like this. Next thing you want to do is to set up paying this mortgage on automatic payment. Don't even think about it. Why? Because you made a promise to pay. Just set up on an automatic payment. Don't even think about it. And pay it on the first of the month. Correct? You pay the taxes, right? Because it's your property. Correct? You put now here we're getting into something here. Where do you think investors get in trouble with a SubTo? Where does the mortgage find out that the title has changed? In most cases, where does that occur? Excuse me? They don't pay on time. Correct. But we fixed that problem because we said we're going to pay on time. We don't want the mortgage company calling us. We want to call the mortgage company. Correct? Yeah. Where do investors get in trouble with SubTo? You're going to pay your taxes on time. Remember I put the point there? You have the rights, you have the authority, and the responsibility for this property, so pay your taxes on time. Yes?
The payments start coming from a different source.
Actually, they don't care. They don't care. You're making the payment. Who said insurance? Insurance is where most investors get in trouble. Why? Because if you don't have a rock star insurance broker, that insurance broker will, because the insurance broker, mine, handles my policies through the mortgage company. But they're a rock star insurance broker who works with investors all the time. She knows that I've acquired this property via SubTo. I've already educated her. Therefore, she's going to communicate with the bank in the kind of terminology that never says the title has changed. Is usually one of these insurance brokers that don't work with investors who tips off the bank, do you realize that the title has changed? What? That's when you start getting calls from the bank. That's where most investors get in trouble, and it's when it comes to insurance. So you want to have a rock star dream team insurance broker who works with investors who will not tip off the bank or say anything about title. We're operating according to this specific power of attorney. Prosperity One has the authority to make changes of insurance on this property. Go look at the specific power of attorney. They say, oh yeah, we do have that document here. Okay, we'll make the changes. You need somebody who knows how to communicate with the bank. Okay? And here's best practice here. You could purchase 2 separate policies, keep a policy in the previous seller's name and then put a policy in your name. But somebody over here said they were interested in cash flow. If I have 2 insurance policies, what's that going to do to my cash flow? I don't want 2 insurance policies. I want one insurance policy. So what do? I keep the policy in the previous owner's name. My company becomes a loss payee, right? Which is my entity. If I have any private lenders involved, I'll make them the loss payee. This is not going to tip the bank off. The bank says, well, still in the name of the title owner or the mortgage owner. I'm cool with that. Does that make sense? Yeah. If you're going to do SubTo, be very, very careful here. Acquire yourself a rockstar insurance broker. Here's an example with no cash. This is a property. I do social media. Social media works for investors. People call you from social media. About 2 years ago, this was a owner who had rented out a property. The renters tore the place up. She didn't have enough money to repair, so she let it sit. After a while, the city of Portsmouth said, you need to fix this house out. And if you don't fix this house out, we're going to tear it down and send you the bill for it. So she hired a contractor who went in, who quoted her a price to repair it. And then after they started doing more work, they found more problems. And they came back and said, we underestimated that. This is going to cost you $100,000 to repair this house. We're talking Hampton Roads here. We're not talking about up here. $100,000 is huge for a renovation project in Hampton Roads. And so she said, I don't have $100,000. And so they stopped doing the work. She heard about me on social media and gave me a phone call. Said, I saw you on social media. I understand you buy properties, distress. I got this problem here. I wonder if you can help me out. Sure, I'm a problem solver. Let's go have coffee. So we went and sat in Starbucks. She told me her issue, and she said, I don't have the money to repair this house. I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we joint venture? I will come up with the cost. I will repair the home. I will own a percentage of the home. You'll own a percentage of the home. I'll repair the home. And then once we're done with the home, we'll rent it out. We'll both receive cash flow from it. You won't have to do a thing. Okay? However, because I'm putting a lot of money into this, and the house is only worth this much, I'm going to own 83% of the home. You're going to end up owning 17% of the home. Are you okay with that? And she said, yes. Why? Because the city was saying, we're tearing this house down. You're not going to have anything, and you're going to be ending up with an $88,000 mortgage on a house that doesn't exist anymore. So she was motivated.
And the city might have charged her too.
And the city would have sent her a bill. So I acquired this house with no cash. So it is possible to assume a property with no cash. All right, bought it with no dollars. I gave you the scenario there. And it did cost $100,000 of repairs. Today the ARV is $240,000. Okay, is this an example? Yeah, this is an example of a deal. A partner of mine, actually a student of mine, she likes North Carolina because she grew up in North Carolina. And so we put a property under contract, however, it didn't sell. We tried to market this for, over a month, 6 weeks, did open houses, no offers. Went back to the owner and said, would you be willing to write a new contract, because it did have a mortgage on it, would you be willing for us to market this and write a contract, being able to utilize existing finance? And they said, okay. So we rewrote the contract, we remarketed this as a SubTo deal, and it sold. Why did it sell? Because the purchaser didn't need to come up with so much money to purchase it. The beauty of SubTo. I'm utilizing the existing financing. I just need to come up with some additional money, but not the whole thing. This is where SubTo helps you to sell a property. Also, this is a 4.5% mortgage. Investors can't get mortgages or financing at 4.5% today. Okay? Now, this is the deal we currently have on contract today. This, we're asking $98,500 for this. The mortgage is at 3.75%. So if anybody want to buy a SubTo deal, we're selling a SubTo deal. All right, it's in North Carolina. You can just go to my website, prosperity1.co, and take a look at the deals we have up there. Okay? All right. I think we've done that. So far today, we talked about the basics, the benefits, the prospects, and the process. Any final questions? We're done. We're at the end. Yes.
So the key is, how do you find these subject to houses? I mean, how do you actually know that it's a subject to opportunity?
If there's a mortgage on it, you simply ask the owner, would you be willing for me to purchase the property? Okay, the question is, how do you find these SubTo deals?
Especially if they have an interest rate that's low, like you were talking about.
Well, the interest rate is, it is what it is. So you can't go and say, well, I'm interested in a SubTo deal at 3% mortgage. It is what it is. However, it's only been for the last year or two, the mortgage has gone up. Prior to that, they were down at 2, 3, and 4%, right? So if you acquire a mortgage over the last 5, 6 years, there's probably a good interest rate on it. To answer your question, and you simply ask the owner, I'd like to purchase your property. Are you open to me purchasing it utilizing the existing finance? The answer is yes or no. And then you go more into details of what that entails. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Could you do that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. See, it's not that hard. Not that hard. You just simply talk in their language. You don't go say, I'd like to buy your property SubTo. I'd like to purchase your property, and they're already in some sort, if you know they're in some sort of financial difficulty, then they're more open. Question in the back.
I think you said in your other meeting that properties that have been on the MLS for a long time could be a SubTo deal.
Yeah, the previous chart that says the prospects of SubTo, I had a whole laundry list there. Property's been on, MLS too long, can't sell it. I'll give you a higher price. Apparently, other people aren't willing to give it to you. But if the deal works for me, I'd be willing to give you your higher price if you give me what I want. I want to buy it utilizing the existing finances for the benefits that it offers.
So would you consider 6 months a long time being up for sale?
Yes. Yes. Question?
Is what you've done here available information that you put together that's on a website or something?
Is actually on, we have a Facebook page. There's a recording being made here. So I already have a recording of this meeting that I did at my RIA, at Team Blessing RIA down in Suffolk, and that's on our Team Blessing RIA Facebook page. And there's no charge to kind of join that. And we put the recordings of our meetings on that. So yeah, the recording will be made available. The question is there a recording of this? Will there be a recording of this? And the answer is yes. Any other questions? Yes.
I just have a question. So
Yeah.
if we're doing a SubTo deal, do you necessarily have to have, if you want to rent it out, have a buyer? I mean, somebody who will rent it out if you're doing a process, or do you wait?
Repeat the question.
Like if you're doing a SubTo, you decide you want to use it as a rental property.
Yes.
Do you already need to have somebody in mind who's going to rent the property before you do it?
Those are two different things. The question is, in order to do a SubTo deal and you're going to rent it out, do you already need to have the renter kind of lined up? And the answer is no. We as investors, we do take some risk in buying the property and then getting some sort of exit strategy that we prefer to use. Sometimes I've had a targeted exit strategy and then found out, switched it to something else. So it's kind of good to have multiple exit strategies. But SubTo is the acquiring the property. And then once you've acquired, and it is, first, I should have said this in the beginning, this is simply one tool in your toolbox. You're not going to use SubTo for every deal you go out there, okay? As you're looking at deals, you say, well, how might that fit? How might I acquire this? The normal route may work. If you've got all the cash yourself, just buy it. You may use a HELOC, use your own money. You may use other people's money, whether that is a hard money lender, private lender, capital investor. So as you're going about this, you're just seeing how might it fit for this opportunity. And if there is a mortgage involved, and then the seller has some sort of financial distress, if the seller is behind in the mortgage, then they become pretty good opportunities as a SubTo deal. And so if you've got the pieces of the equation to make that work, like a SubTo contract, a real estate attorney, real estate attorney who knows how to do this, and you know how to do this, and you just follow the process, it can work. Yes. All right. Any other questions before we finish?
What happens if banks call the market if they find out?
The goal is for you to call the bank and the bank to never call you. The goal is to follow best practices so you don't get there. You don't want the bank calling you. Now, if the bank calls you, then you just have to fix it at that equation. You could sell the property if you don't have the money or the ability to get a new mortgage. You could go out and get a new refinance, go out and get a new mortgage yourself.
Have you ever heard of a situation where the bank will allow you to keep the cell phone?
I have not.
Because for them, for me, if I'm a banker, okay, you still paying the mortgage.
Yeah, some don't care. Some may be a stickler to following the rules. And if they're a stickler to following the rules, it doesn't matter whether it makes sense or not. There was a question in the back?
I was going to say, most likely, like, if you do get a call from the bank, it's a smaller bank, not a
Correct.
national bank.
Correct.
They're going to be less likely to work with you and to keep it, but then you can ask them, hey, can I just assume the loan now?
Right.
I mean, that's one way you might be able to do it easily. Larger banks, if it's a BOA or Wells or something, they're not going to call you.
The percentage of the bank calling you is probably 1 or 2%. And if you're following best practices, most likely not going to hit you. They'll call somebody else. Any other final questions as we close out? Going once, going twice. It's been a pleasure giving the presentation tonight. You've been an excellent audience.